This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, very good. Has anyone submitted any public comments for requests, Michael?
I have not received any, and any new ones would have been emailed directly to me, and I have not received any from our email source.
Okay. All right, very good. Moving on to item number 2, adjustments to this agenda. Ben, do you have any adjustments?
I do not.
Okay, well, would you move a motion to approval of this agenda?
So moved.
Okay, I would second it. So we have a motion and a second, and we both have approved. So we have an approved agenda for the Executive Committee 3/8/2019. We have a couple quick updates. Michael, can we move item 4 and do that on the back end, because that's not as important as some of our other items?
Yeah, I mean, basically I can tell you it's all had been completed.
Okay. Okay, well, that's fantastic. All right, then. Okay, well, just for the record, I will quickly read them, that getting agendas out in advance with 2-week notice, that we had research reserve policy, asked the auditor for an opinion regarding unrealized losses and gains, and the credit card for matching incentives. Well, could you really quick give us an update, Michael, on the lost gains from the auditor?
We have to keep them in. We have to keep them as they are in the accounting software and in the report that the accounting software produces. However, in terms of the report that you guys see, the format that Paul has selected, in which he pulls them out at the bottom, is perfectly okay with the description that is on there.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. So then we're okay with moving forward come October.
Yes.
All right. Then we had moving to 5-1 memberships. Our former co-chair and long-serving Carla Morrison has formally resigned from the board effective immediately due to additional duties at her university. Can we request her to show up in cafe to thank her in person, Michael?
Absolutely. And I'll probably beg her to see if she'd work, because she is a fantastic worker at cafe.
Right. And would it be appropriate to cover her expenses to recognize her?
We talked about that a little bit, but yes, I mean, we had planned in looking at the budget, we could cover her travel, depending, if she comes over for a day or stays the night.
Right. Okay. We'll offer that if needed. Okay.
Okay. Absolutely. Action on, please.
All right. And then we're receiving some candidates, and I believe we're going to begin some interview processes, right?
Yes. We have received 5 or 6. I couldn't remember. I believe 6. Yes. And so what it was is we had an action item. I can't remember what meeting it was, to send out a recruitment email. And so it's been fantastic. And so I have put some place markers on my schedule already, and I will be doodling the entire, the executive committee to where we can get those interviews. And I know right now one is scheduled for the 12th.
Michael, how many positions are we looking to fill?
We need, Eric, do you remember that number? I believe we need to add 6. Ben, we need 6 in the category number 1, which is your category and JR's category, users of assistive technology and or family members of users of assistive technology.
Okay, I've got one or possibly two candidates that that I'm going to be. I've already reached out to them. They've expressed some interest, and so I've got tentative plans to meet with them and give them a little more information and everything in the next few days. So.
Ben, we have a job description.
I don't know that they would both be interested. It's a couple, and either would be a great fit, I believe. But I would imagine they probably choose one or the other, but not both.
Okay. Well, we have a job description, and so I'll have Eric, if that would help, email you the job description where you can share with them.
Perfect.
Right, and add me to that list because I think, remember the video we did for the guy down there in UCF, and he was doing some of the adaptive technology stuff, Hector?
Yeah.
He might be a possible candidate.
Well, let's just go ahead and have the action item is we'll just forward the recruitment, we'll forward the job description to the entire board to where they can have.
Right, and in fact, why don't you, part of that action item, request each board member to identify one person within 30 days.
Copy that.
Michael, remind me again what the term is for board membership.
3 years.
3 years, and we're allowed to serve 2 consecutive.
Yes, and then if you'd like to come back on, you need to set out a 12 calendar months.
Gotcha.
Right. And maybe have that within the email so it's clear to folks. But let's hold people accountable on that, Michael, and have a little chart and update your executive committee the next time we meet of who's all fulfilled their obligations of recruiting a possible candidate for at least making the effort.
If I could just add this caveat is since the state agencies are, what I call gotchas, I'm going to leave those out. I'm going to leave them out of the email and just send it to categories 1, 2, and 3.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to any other questions on membership, Ben?
Nope, that does it for me.
Okay, very good. Moving on to number 2 and 5.2 on our agenda, and this is the primary purpose, objective of this particular executive committee. It came to my attention that we had some gaps in our policies, bylaws, manuals of operations for staff, executive director, and board members with regards to do's, don'ts, conduct of good behavior, and just overall representing the organization well. Ben, did you get a chance to kind of look at kind of our current bylaws and manuals of operations and board policies? You still there, Ben?
I am, JR. I did get a chance to review them. I don't know that I could say I've reviewed them down to the minutia, but I did have a chance to kind of go over them and some of your comments in relation to that.
Okay. Well, it's my opinion and our executive director's opinion that we really have 12 updates that we need to achieve. Conflict of interest, joint venture, executive director, risk management, equal employment, anti-harassment, audit, due process, governance, disqualifying members, and financial disclosure. And then in addition, whistleblower, document retention, and gift acceptance. Am I missing something here, Michael?
No, and if I could just state real briefly, and Ben, I believe you were on the board when we did when we developed this is we do have the, as it says there, the board operating manual, and some of those, some of those topics are in there. However, they're not per se policies. And so basically what this proposal is to pull some of that language out of there to where it'll be an official policy adopted by the board.
Yeah, that was my understanding, Michael, and I would concur that I think all that makes perfect sense.
And then some of the other ones here, as it says, are best practice. And how I determine those is, with the research and also going to the auditor, is basically there's five policies that every board needs to have. And so this also includes those, and they're separated typically as the best practice policies.
Right, and that's noted as number 3, 4, and 5. Is that what you're saying?
No, it just on the description. I have in here, like number 1, it says conflict of interest, and then out from it says this is a statement in the board operating manual, but not a policy. And then number 2 is joint venture, and then it says this is a best practice policy. And so,
and so that's how they're delineated, right?
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 would be best practices, but then 1 through 12 are areas where we have deficiencies between our board policy, our manual, and our bylaws.
Yeah, it's just, it's in the manual, but they need to be policies instead of, buried in a manual, because it's really, really difficult to have to go through a 32 page document to find what you're looking for, as opposed to, having an individual document in which you could just do a search for, meta tags that we could put in those individual documents.
Right. And then they could easily be broken out, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Easily found, easily searched, and easily applied, especially as it relates to continuous training from a board member standpoint, executive director, and staff.
Yeah, and we actually already are looking at, and if you're on the GoToMeeting, we're actually already developed a format in which all of these would be considered in a manual. The manual title is FAAST Policy and Operations Manual, and basically we would do it by section. And like section 1 is governance, section 2 is board policies, and then this right here is just as a working document. Section 3 is procedures related to board policies, section 4 is board procedures, and then the 5th section is financial. And again, that's just a working document, but we're already thinking about the structure of it.
Okay. So what is then the process in which we would, let's say, update these shortcomings and get them out for review, and then having them prepared for ratification and consideration by our June board meeting?
What I would propose is what we have done with, how we've done all of our policies, is that staff would get together and do some research and develop a draft policy and present it to the executive committee, and then we could, and then have the executive committee massage it, wordsmith it, and then present it to the board in its entirety at the meeting immediately following, once the executive committee is okay with it. Dr. Harding, I can also tell you, we kind of knew that we were going to have to do this with, from our meetings. And so what we have done here is we've actually gone out and done some research, and there is a set of policies that, template policies, I should say, that we did purchase and that we do have a fairly, to me, we're a leg up on some of these policies, because basically these policies that we purchase have already gone through legal review, and they are nonprofit specific. And so basically what we would be doing for some of these is just going through those, and what we call FAASTizing is making it very specific to our organization when needed.
Okay, and then on that note, I think it would be important for coming out of the next executive committee meeting is highlighting some of those changes and what kinds of trainings or reviews or bringing to board members' attention at the June board meeting. What kinds of changes were there, what kinds of expectations, what kinds of due process associated with these new policies and operations would look like. You follow me?
Yes, and the other thing, you did mention the word review. The format that we have it also has review dates for each of them. And so these policies will be on a perpetual schedule for review as well.
Right. All right. Very good. And that would be a best practices on an annual kind of process or biannual process.
Well, yeah, some of them, the ones that are very financial sensitive should be on an annual process. And those are like the conflict of interest, procurement, risk management policy as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Any questions or concerns from your point of view, Ben?
Nope, not at all, JR.
Okay. Right. Well, this is very timely, and I would think that you're hearing a collective voice from the majority of your executive committee, Michael, to ask staff and you guys to move forth with exceptional speed but good due diligence on these issues.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank
well, then coming from that, it's my obligation as your co-chair to kind of briefly share why this came to our attention, and then what other actions might be needed in some kind of confirmation of a suggested course of action. We did have an incident that came to my attention with our executive director of bad judgment and inappropriate behavior, and he and I have talked about it, and we have a suggested course of action at the end of May that we'll get to in a minute, but there's no need to get into the details of it all. It did involve, a former or member of the board and our director, and this is water now under the bridge. But all policies need to be consistent in terms of, representing the organization, not having conflicts of interest, not creating risk issues to the organization, and otherwise behaving in a manner that is representative of the organization. And because we need to lead by example, it is my recommendation in the executive committee that Michael take 2 weeks of time off at the end of session from May 20th to May 31st without pay. And then this way we can affirm to our staff that all individuals are held equally and accountable, and there is an expectation that we all represent this organization both on and off official clock time. This might have caught you off guard a little bit, Ben, but I think, since this is open to the public and so forth, that, it's water under the bridge now, but because of it, we identified that we had some gaps in our policies and procedures, and this was the best way to move forward. Do you have any questions or concerns that I could answer right now?
No, I would agree, JR. I mean, we always try to, do these things in advance, but when we happen to discover things that were in the rear view, we still have to address them as expeditiously as possible. So it all makes sense to me.
Okay. All righty. And then, so we'll just note that for the record that Michael will take a 2-week suspension beginning May 20th through the end of the month, so we have time to recover from our session and also prepare for our June meeting. Okay. Let's see. Is there any other items, Michael, on 5.2 that we need to cover so that we are prepared for our next executive committee and then ultimately for the June meeting, so we can ratify some of these items and begin any additional staff training and board training as it relates to our policies and procedures?
Yeah, I've already laid out a schedule in terms of preparing the documents. The one thing I will need to add is a preparation of the documents of the policies that we have mentioned, and so I will begin doing that and incorporate that into the plan. But yes, I've taken more control of my calendar, and so from here until the end of the fiscal year, in terms of all of our board meetings and advisory council meetings, we are planning. We do have a plan to get all voting materials out 15 days ahead of time, and then that Wednesday following that 15-day mark to get out the rest of the materials.
Okay. All right, so then that way, is that 15 business days or 15 calendar days?
I can't remember. I think it is calendar days, and that's in the bylaws of anything that needs voted on. So, but I know,
okay,
I think with my schedule, the way I did it, I think I did do more than 15 days. I think most of them came to like 18.
Okay. Well, that's good, because especially with our financial documents and now with some of these new board's policies and procedures, people are going to need some reading time. And if there was any like strike all and those kinds of things, Michael, as we do with the legislature, so people can know what's new and what's not new.
Yes.
And then we might come out of that June meeting with appropriate updates to staff training, ED training, and board member training, especially since we're going to be recruiting new board members, those expectations of, clear due process, clear conflict of interest, and just ultimately good behavior and good management.
Correct. Yeah, and we actually, just to reiterate, in the board interview process, we actually asked them to review all of our policies in advance. And so that, since this right here possibly could be after some of the interviews, we may want to do that, once these are in place, send out something and have a document wherever, the board has reviewed these, our policies.
Right, and I think a part of the onboarding process for new board members, as well as any time sitting members activate a new 3-year option, that there should be a check, have read, have understand, and are willing to sign the non-conflicts of interest.
Oh, yes. I know we typically do that annually, during the last meeting of the fiscal year, but yes, that's one of the things. Now that you say that, I know that when we do onboard, we don't have them sign a conflict of interest, and we do need to do that because they do sign the acceptance letter.
Right. But I think reviewing some of the core management procedures and policies and those kinds of things would also be important to affirm that you've seen it, you've read it, and that you didn't have any questions.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Well, then, are there any other items under tab 5.2 that we need to cover?
None in my opinion, sir.
Okay. Ben?
Nope, I'm good, JR.
All right. Well, I do have one small one because part of our obligation is to coach and help evaluate our director on our conference calls and our executive committee stuff. Should we just have a little note or something, Michael, that's included just so we have it, so when it's time for the annual review that we do remember our little hiccup and how we move forward and how you move forward and what kind of proactive actions we're taking?
Yeah, that we can incorporate that into the scoring sheet.
Yes. Okay. Very good. Well, then, hearing none on 5.2, and we move forward on some of our, learning from experience and moving forward, we'll move to standing items and fiscal updates. Since Mr. Tobin isn't present, can Eric or you help us with the financials?
Since we had a board meeting in February, Mr. Tobin did present the January financials at that meeting, and so
right.
Basically the February financials will be presented at the March executive committee meeting.
Okay. All right. And do we have a new date on that? Because that was a little conflict because it's DD Day or something like that.
It's our legislative work day, and I haven't looked at the doodle, but let me look here real fast.
Right.
It looks like the majority it'll be April the 2nd, Tuesday, April the 2nd at 4 o'clock.
Okay, Tuesday, October 2nd. Let me write that down. October 2nd at 4 o'clock. Okay. Ben, you got that written down?
Actually, JR, I don't have the ability to right now. I'm having to drive.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Michael, well then, can you follow up, Michael, with a little summary to your executive committee on, our motions and our updates, and then specifically highlight April 2nd at 4 p.m. for our February, for our March executive committee meeting occurring on April 2nd.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do the public notice today, and then
right.
and then everybody will get the calendar invite.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, then that covers items 1 through 6, heading into 7, which is public comments. And there isn't any public comments from notifications. Right. Well, then we're doing very well on time. We have a few minutes left before Ben leaves us. Do you want to give us any additional besides, you said all items on number 4 were handled, right? The credit card, the lost gains issue, the reserve policy. Oh, that was the one note that we were going to, part of our rainy day fund that we wanted to begin coming out of the first quarter this year, to set a 5-year goal to see if we could get to a 90-day reserve fund achievement.
Yeah, and we researched that amount, and that amount is approximately $295,000. And am I correct, Whitney? Was it that, or was it anything? Was that the amount? Or to Whitney? I'm fairly confident that was the amount. I'm not for sure where
Okay.
she is. But,
Well,
Oh,
then,
I'm so sorry, y'all. Yep, it was 295,000.
okay. Thank you, Whitney.
okay. And then I guess over a 5-year window, could we make an estimate on what kind of reasonable goal could we set to achieve that on a quarterly basis?
Yes, that shouldn't be an issue.
Right. And then also we might want to tag some kind of reasonable fundraising goal that would also support it. So let's say we're saving, I don't know, $5,000 a quarter. Maybe we could also set for $1,000 a quarter in fundraising.
Yes, and we'll have to do that with the next budget cycle.
Right. Whatever. And that we begin in June, right? Or August.
October. Yeah,
Or
we're on
would
the
that be October?
Yeah,
That
October.
would be October. Okay, so maybe then have Whitney and staff start looking at those numbers to see what are realistic goals that we could reasonably hit to achieve that 5-year window.
Yeah, we got it down as an action item, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, we have no public comment. We went through items 1 through 7. Any other last minute items, Ben, on your side of the fence?
Nope, good to go, JR. Thank you.
Okay, well then, I guess we can end this meeting a little early. Well, I'll take a motion to close the meeting out.
So moved,
All
JR.
in favor?
43.
Okay, done. All right, thank you. Appreciate it, guys. All right, thank you, Michael.
Have a good weekend. Take care, guys.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thank you.